afternoon or evening, I guess you would say it. This is Jason here, and I have another great interview lined up for everybody. I am speaking with, Grady Wells. Grady is an accomplished ultra runner. It's hard to say Middle Tennessee, East Tennessee. We'll just say East Middle Tennessee because or Middle Eastern Tennessee because he's kind of, he calls himself the fringe and on the fringe there, but he sits in an area that sits right in between Middle Tennessee and Chattanooga, and it's an area that a lot of us Middle Tennessee people come out and run in. It's a place called Swanee. So thanks for joining me, Grady. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me and having this opportunity to speak with you.
Cool. So first off, I always like to start everything off by asking, are you from around the area? Where are you from, Tennessee? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm pretty local. I'm from Tullahoma, just up the road from Sewanee. I've lived in Cookeville, Tennessee, where I went to university at Tennessee Tech. Lived in Murray, Kentucky, where I did some of my graduate work. And I lived briefly in Louisville, Kentucky, where I met my wife. And then we slowly made our way back to the area, lived in Cookeville for a while, and then finally settled in Sewanee in 2015. So very local to this area, but I have been around the regional area from Louisville to Murray to Cookeville.
So, and I think a lot of people locally watching this will know why I'm asking you this. But so Swanee, for people who don't know, Swanee is a very small town that sits on top of, a mountain in between Nashville and Chattanooga. And it's kind of an out of the way place, but it's absolutely gorgeous there. That area is one of my favorite places to run. So what was the draw to Swanee? Was it work? What brought you to that particular area?
Yeah, so my wife was a urologist, and that's why we moved to this area because she worked at the Winchester and Sewanee hospitals. And it's just a great place to live, great place to raise a family. And I currently work for the University of the South as a field biology professor. So, within that context of my job and my professional life, I just can't think of a better place, for me to be, for me to fulfill my professional life. But the running aspects are, phenomenal to this area, like you mentioned. And it is kind of out of the way, I suppose, for Nashville and Chattanooga, but we're right off of I-24, so perhaps it seems hidden, but it's not. And definitely invite runners from all around to come to this area. It's closer than you think.
Absolutely, and it's funny because I'm one of my good friends is Will Els, and he and I. It's funny because when we're always talking about whether we want to go to Percy Warner or Swanee, he's like, Swanee's basically about the same distance from Murfreesboro as it is Percy Warner, because the distances are not really, Swanee may be a little bit further, but you have the interstate drive. And so it ends up breaking to being about the same distance. And it's funny because, the great thing about the Swanee area is you have you have the Swanee Perimeter Trail, which is a great trail. It's I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it's not easy, right?
Right.
However, on the other side of the bridge, you have the Fiery Gizzard, which is very unforgiving,
Yes.
which will absolutely destroy you and crush your soul. I remember the first time I went out there, I literally thought death was imminent coming in and out of those gorges. But I guess for somebody like you probably, are used to running out there quite a bit. So it's probably not that bad to you.
Well, it's a whole lot worse than it used to be, or let me rephrase that. It's more challenging now than it used to be several years ago because they had a kind of a controversial reroute. And that's why you drop into those two gorges that you probably noticed. Otherwise, it used to be really flat across the top. but yeah, with those new additions, it's, you know, 3 significant climbs from, you know, Park Tracy City over to Foster Falls. But, you know, in addition to that, within the South Cumberland State Park conglomerate or area is my favorite of all the trails, the Savage Gulf
Oh yeah.
area, which it is absolutely brutal any way you approach that trail system.
Oh, it absolutely is. And a real funny story before we go get into your running. Me and a buddy thought it would be fun to backpack from the Stone Door over to Hobbs Cabin. And that was like my first ever real backpacking excursion, right? And so yeah, it broke me pretty bad because that climb up into Hobbs Cabin, I don't know if you know what that climb is
Yeah,
like, but it is when you're carrying about 25, 30 pounds on your back. Yeah, it's not easy.
yeah,
And I
you
was
notice that.
and my buddy was like, "Yeah, parts of this trail is actually part of the Savage Gulf because I've never ran Savage Gulf. I've heard about it."
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah, parts of this trail is actually part of the Savage Gulf Marathon." And I was like, "Geez, Louise." I mean, and I know Harden has got that one and is about to put it back on, so that should be a great race. That now since it's back.
Yeah, it's you know, the first time I did that, I said I'd never do it again, and this will be my 7th year, I think, doing it. So uh, I've just made peace with it, and it's just an enjoyable sufferfest for however long it takes to get through it. But I recommend it. You ought to sign up for it this March.
I definitely should. I've got a 100 miler the 1st of April, so I definitely need some training runs. So I'm on a couple, so we'll have to see. So I guess tell us the running your running story because I pulled up your ultra sign up
Mhm.
and you've ultra sign up has you. I know you've ran more than this, but it has you running like 60 something races, which is a lot. And so you have a pretty extensive running history. So what started you running? I mean, what was the thing that got you moving?
Sure. I guess like with most runners and like most of these stories, it starts in childhood. So I guess my first phase with running um, was, you know, a way to stay conditioned for like team sports growing up, like baseball, basketball, and especially soccer. You know, some cross country, and you know, and even as a kid, I just enjoyed running. Like I'd go jogging with my dad occasionally through the neighborhood that we lived in Tullahoma. But kind of a side story in a way that kind of brings me full circle into trail running is that when I was growing up, my father was a wildlife officer. So we spent lots of time, you know, hiking throughout the Cumberland Plateau, through the Smokies, various park trails on the Highland Rim. So just this active outdoor kind of life growing up. And running is a really great way to, you know, pursue any outdoor activity and to, you know, move through nature. In high school, you know, I kind of got away from, you know, running sports and got into mountain biking, which is another endurance outlet,
Oh
as you
yeah, very hard.
and yeah, and just, you know, still, you know, kind of in nature and on the trails. And then in college, I didn't play any sports, but I kept up my running for just pleasure, for, you know, doing 5Ks, 10Ks, that sort of thing. But I was a fisheries and wildlife science major in college and in grad school, and that requires a lot of field work. And even youthful fitness can't get you through some of that field work. So running is a good way to kind of stay up to speed, to pull seines through rivers and, you know, collect fishes and etc. After that, I got received a job at Motlow State Community College and spent a lot of time lecturing and just start feeling stagnation creep into my body in my mid 20s. So got into cycling, road cycling, heavy, and did quite a bit of racing. And I guess about 2 years into that, I met my wife and just couldn't do those long cycling rides on the weekends. So it started tapering off. And I was like, I need to just get back into running, just, to stay fit and to, kind of have this outlet. And we're living in Louisville, Kentucky in the Highlands, and we're real close to Cherokee Park, which has tons of runners, tons of paved trails, lots of single track trails. And I really found a love for trail running around 2011 and 2012. And, I've done like a lot of races that are not on ultra sign up, like various things through active, etc.com. And in about that time, I did my first, I guess about 2013, I did my first trail race in Fayetteville, Tennessee, which is
Hmm.
not, place you would think of for trail
Right.
run, but it was called Run for Ella. And, at that point, I knew I was really hooked into trail running and not just ultra distance. I really enjoy the shorter stuff, as you can see on the ultra sign up. And,
Hmm.
since that point, it's just been just a gradual, consistent outlet that I just continue to, pursue and, stay consistent and just try to get, as good as I can. Um, Not as fast as I can, but, just try to be, the best runner I could possibly can with all the, juggling life and everything else.
So what did you, I guess, when did you decide, like, what was it, when did you decide to move from the shorter distances to like the ultra running? What was the draw to that? Like, what was that decision? You remember, and do you remember what your first race was, your first ultra race?
Um, so I think I had just, with a lot of runners like we read, obviously, and it wasn't Born to Run, but it was a book by Bern Heinrich, and in golly, I cannot remember the name of it. I think it's called Why We Run or Running with Antelopes, and he's a biologist, and he actually was, I think, the first and second ultra runner of the year. And anyway, he's, describing these 50 milers, and it just, blew my mind that you could, do something like that, even a marathon. Cause I mean, up until, I did an ultra, a half was it. So not my first ultra, but my first marathon was Mooney's Midnight Marathon in Livingston, Tennessee, which is not listed, and very few people have heard of it probably, but it is a treat of an event that is, I don't think they do it anymore, but you do 5 loops around Livingston, Tennessee, which is in the middle of nowhere.
Right. I mean, it's small.
Yes, very, very small. So that it's a completely weird experience. The town has no idea this is really going on and how to, handle it. But anyway, uh, that was my first marathon experience, and I knew I was hooked at that distance and would pursue longer distances. But my official first ultra marathon was Stump Jump in, I think, 2013 or 14, as is for most people in this area. It had a horrible experience, but once it was done and over with, I knew I would do it again.
I mean, you had a pretty good time there. I mean, for, I would say most people would love to have a sub 7 hour uh run at stump jump for their first 50K, because it's funny because I it seems like I say this, I feel like a broken record, because I literally think you're maybe like the sixth or seventh person I've interviewed that stump jump is was their first 50K. I just interviewed Ryan Anderson
Hmm.
a few weeks ago, and that was his first one. I mean, I don't even want to go down the list, because it seems like that's where everybody starts. Is that's like the first one is like stump jump, and yeah, I mean, you had a pretty good time there, and so I guess you ran it, and I guess in your mind you struggled a little bit, but like you came out with a pretty decent time, and you know at that point, did you decide I'm hooked on these long distance? I want to do some more of these, or what were you feeling after you finished that one?
Well, I guess to back up a little bit, I think the reason most people do that as their first one is like, 7 or 8 years ago, there just were not a lot of ultras in this area. And that was like in my mind, like the one, and like there were there's been YouTube videos on that race for,
Oh
forever.
yeah,
People kind of gravitated towards that. Part of the reason my experience was so bad there is I just was eaten alive by yellow jackets. I mean, and that,
hmm
anybody who's experienced stump jump, they've experienced yellow jackets, and that's when I say that I had a bad experience. It's primarily related to those guys, but spending a long time in the woods doing something that we evolved to do, running, just really captures kind of my imagination and spirit, and the kind of glowing feeling you have after the end of one of those events. Right away that you want to do it again or not. And I definitely
right.
have the feeling of this is the raddest thing ever. I've got to keep doing this. And uh, yeah, I just love that feeling you get at the end of an ultra. When you get to hang out with your buddies and you kind of relive the day's war stories, so to speak.
So, in looking at, and going through and looking at, your races and just looking at your times, you've always seemed to be more on the, you're more on the faster side than you are on the slower side. So, I mean, were you always pretty quick, like, or did you build up your speed before you really got into running, or do you think the cycling kind of helped you? Because I know you have people like a guy that you literally you chased at Mountain Mist, Jason Lloyd,
Yeah.
who that guy cycles and well, he does everything, but he cycles a lot, and I think that probably really plays a big role in kind of his running and whatnot, but like, his strength and his running. But do you think your cycling kind of helped you kind of start out of the gate fairly well at running?
Yeah, I think so. I think playing team sports and being an athlete, throughout my life, helped out tremendously, but like in short bursts. But cycling really helps, stuff at the half marathon distance up through the ultra distance. Cause, your long rides on a bike, you're out there for a long period of time, at a red line level, and you just have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
I think being able to handle that both physically and mentally, really, has allowed me, and probably in other people probably have had a similar experience, uh, to be, I guess, more on the faster side, perhaps, or do as best as they can in longer distance events. But I do think there is something in cycling that does and will help runners if they do more cross training type things. It will improve their performances, and I think it has helped me.
Yeah, I don't have the guts to get on the bicycle on the road. I'd be afraid I'd get hit by a car. I just know how crazy people drive here in Tennessee, and I would be petrified to try to get on the road, and I don't know, people are just nuts. So
Yeah, I would not ride in Murfreesboro or Nashville if you paid me to. Down here, in Sewanee, the Tullahoma area, you can go on 30-mile bike rides and maybe see 5 cars. So it's a much different scenario down here. However, we have lots of unchained dogs, which can be
a
as
problem.
yeah.
It's funny because me and a friend, when we were training for 100 milers, we thought it would be a good idea to do the perimeter trail at nighttime, and we did it in the summertime, and You're right. It is. I mean, there is nothing going on at night up there. Other than some college kids down at the cross at the parking lot, enjoying themselves a little bit. Uh, there was nothing. I mean, it was it was pitch black, no sounds other than you in the woods and
Mhm.
spiders that were that big, on the trail. Um, but you're right. There's nothing going on up there, and so I can see. I mean, I know that's at nighttime, but even during the daytime, there's hardly any traffic out on the road. I mean, like not like Murfreesboro here, where it's like,
Oh,
you
it's two
know,
different movies.
yeah, I mean, we've turned into such a big city here. I mean, we can't even accommodate the cars on the road now. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even imagine cycling up here. So, but anyway, not to get sidetracked. Um, so looking at what's interesting about looking at your races is you pick a lot of races that are more, I guess you would say, not your run of the mill popular races like Cummins Falls.
Mhm.
um that is, I hear that's a great race. I've never ran it before. You like that, Fall Creek Falls, uh, you know um stuff. What draws you to some of these smaller style races? Is it just do you like that more? I know, do you like that more smaller style, less crowded field where it just is a little bit more personal?
Yeah, starting out running years ago, um, everything had a small grassroots feel to it, unless you did like some rock and roll, whatever, marathon event. Everything was just small. Um, you knew everybody there. And I just really liked that vibe. I pick a lot of races in places that I've lived at before. So having lived in Cookeville, I love the Cummins Falls area. I used to do a lot of training there on the trails when they first built the park there. And yeah, I've done every distance there except the marathon. And it's just a familiar thing that, I just like those memories of going up there. Um, and I like to approach diversity and diversity of races, the distances. All those things are important to keeping it fresh for me. And I don't want to be that runner that just focuses on one distance and gets burned out. Like I like to experience it on like every strata that you can, because I want longevity in this sport. I want to be doing this when I'm 70.
And I think that's the cool thing about one of the reasons why I was drawn to wanting to interview you, because you look at your pedigree of races and you don't fit the average ultra runner. You have like, I've done so many of these interviews, and a lot of them look exactly the same. Their results look exactly the same, the style races, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
No,
like, you're one of the first people that I've interviewed that I'm actually looking at some 10K trail races for. And that's cool because because I have to tell you, like when I started ultra running, talking about yellow jackets, I ran a race in Memphis called the Stanky Creek.
hmm
It was a 50K, 25K, and I ran through a nest of yellow jackets there, but I did the 25K version of it, and it was so much fun. And there's something about doing those shorter distances, like I did the River Gorge, the 10-mile version of the River Gorge, and that was really enjoyable, right? And it's like, it is fun to mix up your distances to where you're not constantly doing the exact same thing all the time, and you get to experience things at different levels. So um I definitely think that that's really cool. And then, like I said, there's stuff on here excuse me, that like I had never even heard of before, like the Flipper Bend trail races,
yeah,
and these are things like, I guess you just kind of run across these races and think, you just want to try them out, or is it the particular, like I said, the different like areas, like I guess I'm trying to figure out how to word this, like different parks, different forests, different places to see, different views. I mean, is that kind of what your thought process is too?
Yeah, that is definitely a part of it. Flippers Bend, for example, is run by the Wild Trails and the Hortons, and like I know I'm going to get a good experience from them. But it's a system I've never had run before with amazing views north of Chattanooga. So as I go through ultrasonic, I carefully look through events that I've never done before, and I don't really pay attention to the distance that much. Like I said, and I encourage all runners to, if you think you're an ultra runner, do some short stuff too. Like it will help you. You'll have as much fun, and you can still function for the rest of the day afterwards. But yeah, new trails, just new experiences. Just keeps things fresh and interesting for me.
So I have to ask you, there's a race in Swanee called Rim Runner.
Yes.
Um, I've heard lots of people talking about this particular race as being a really, a really, a really good race to run. I have a friend that's thinking about signing up for it. Um, what are your thoughts on the Rim Runner race?
Well, last year was its first year, and I will give them a lot of passes on, experiences that I had that I wasn't too crazy about. But they're working. It's in a way kind of a hard place to have a race because it's the Franklin State Forest, which is not really maintained that well. The hiking trails and mountain biking and running trails are not used that often, so they're pretty rugged, which has some appeal in a way, of course. But otherwise, it's pretty. I don't want to say flat. It's as flat as a perimeter trail, so kind of rolly. No
Mhm.
big climbs in it, so you can move pretty fast. The one issue that I had, and I ran a mile and a half off course at the very end of it, which is never fun, but that's on me. Was that some of the flagging was kind of hard to follow, and the place has flagging everywhere from I don't know hunters or from the Tennessee Division of Forestry, whatever. Um, and I'm sure they'll improve the flagging next year. But but otherwise, it is a pretty decent event. It's the parking is just like right on the highway. If you're familiar with Franklin State Forest, where the forestry cabin is, and I think they have a lot of ATV parking out there. Um, Not a lot of technical terrain to deal with, so you can move pretty fast. And I just did the 25 miler, which is one loop. So if someone's wanting to do 100 there, doing 4 loops would be kind of off-putting to me, but I think it's just a personal choice. Some people embrace that. So um, I think it is a pretty decent event. I think it will be way better next year in moving down the line. It has a really good RD, so um, yeah, flagging could improve. I think it will be a top notch event. I recommend it if someone is like hemming and hawing about whether or not to do it.
Yeah, I always wondered or wish they would do something in Swanee, some sort of ultra
Yeah,
style race between the trail system and the road system up and around the trail. I always thought they could put on a standout race up there
yeah,
because first off, the trail system is extremely well maintained,
yes,
and there's not a lot of traffic, so you could easily put a race on up there, and it wouldn't really interfere with a whole ton of people.
mhm.
But I guess who knows? I guess it's just not meant to be, right?
Yeah. I don't. I'm sure it's something to do with the powers that be or that are above me at the university. But used to I think Dink Taylor and those guys from Huntsville used to do kind of I don't know if it's an underground race or just a kind of a fat ass experience where they would just kind of meet up and guys would just, kind of race each other without it being official. But it would be sweet if there was a, Swanee Perimeter Trail race every year. But, we have the Mountain Goat Trail, which is on that paved trail, which is, it's pretty fun. It's a good half marathon. And then the Fiery Gizzard and Savage Gulf, and then hopefully the Rim Runners will kind of, maintain and improve a little bit. And so there's a lot around us, but I don't know if there will ever be a Swanee Perimeter Trail race.
Yeah.
We'll just have to throw one out there amongst friends.
Yeah, it was like when I asked Trent, when I interviewed him about why there was not a trail race at Percy Warner. And he basically, said that, he had kind of brought it up, and it was kind of, he was kind of casually told that it couldn't happen, and I think, it's just, I don't know if it's just something with, the politics, or just like, people just don't want to mess with the, I don't know, the liability, or what you might have out there, because, there are some spots out there that are a little, that can be a little dodgy, I guess, if you aren't paying attention. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I love it out there. But I guess what's really, it's funny because I was looking at your, when I didn't have a good mountain mist experience last weekend, but when I went and looked at results and I saw how well you ran, with Jason Lloyd, you and Jason were together. Did you end up passing him?
I think at the very end, I don't know if you're familiar with the last aid station. I think it's the beer and chili one or whatever it is.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the top of the plateau out of McKay Hollow, it's a straight flat shot back to the finish line. And I had not seen Jason since Oak Park, actually, but I must have been just right behind him for that interim period. And as soon as I got to the last aid station on top of the mountain, I just took off. I was like, I'm just gonna give it all I've got, and I passed him, I think, within like an eighth of a mile or something, and I just kept hauling ass until I got to the finish line. But he set a great pace at the beginning of Mountain Mist. I hung in his pocket, as he said, until I guess Oak Park, and I had no idea who it was until somebody shouted his name out. I think around miles.
Yeah, because he was wearing a shirt.
Okay.
The joke is, the joke that we have with him is the fact that he never wears a shirt, right? If you run races with Jason, that if he don't have to wear a shirt, he's not going to have a shirt on.
Right.
And I think that the mountain mist weather brought it. It was just a little cold for him to not have it on. So what was your thoughts? I know you've done mountain mist before. So what was your thoughts on this year compared to the last few times you've ran it?
Yeah. So this year, like you said, was the coldest ever. Hard to believe it was Alabama because it was like 16 degrees, I think, when I looked at my little thermometer in my car. And I did not, below 25 degrees, I have a hard time figuring out what to wear. Because it doesn't happen in Tennessee. I mean, I've been in Vermont and Maine when it's been that cold. I wasn't running. So I didn't wear the gear that I really like to wear. I don't like to race with packs or, hip belts, anything like that, because most races are going to have enough food and drinks out there that a handheld is good enough for me. So anyway, ended up wearing a waist belt, which was, kind of annoying. I mean, I fussed over the thing the whole race. I know whoever was behind me was probably laughing the whole time because I was trying to stuff things in and out and get it situated. But, as you know, Mountain Mist starts out pretty fast. It is seems like a net downhill experience. until you get to the bottom of Oak Park. And once I was comfortable with the cold and I settled in behind Jason, it was a comfortable pace that first half, first whatever 15, 16 miles. And then I just kind of grinded up Oak Park and just kind of leaned into that flat area. And when I got to Waterline, which I normally don't run, I was able to run to the top of the thing, other than the little cascade part where you have to do the rope climbs. And after that, it was just a jog to the finish, which I know is a really quick summary of it, but it's how fast it kind of went that day. It was all systems were kind of a go and felt great throughout the whole race. I didn't push it to the point where I felt bad, but the effort that I put in paid off. And finishing a race with a smile is a good experience. I mean, there are just people there that I can't compete with no matter how hard I try. So,
I mean, very, very strong. I mean, you finished, overall, you were in the, 31st. I mean, that's stout. And I think, you look at that, you're talking about gear, that was my downfall. I didn't get into it in my recap because I didn't want it to seem like I was blaming anything in particular, but I got into Huntsville early because I was worried about the cold. And the last time I had ran in cold weather was at Tunnel Hill. And I ended up getting like hypothermia there. I finished the 50 miler, but I got hypothermia, like passed out in my van.
oh
It
no.
was, it was a mess. And so I was worried I was not going to be warm enough. So I went to REI and bought some North Face thermal running tights.
Okay.
You know that saying where they tell you don't ever try something that you never used before a
Right.
race? Guess what? I wore
Yeah.
those thermal tights,
Okay.
and looking back, I never had worn them. That
Mm,
material that was on the interior of it was a lot rougher than what I was used to wearing,
okay.
like the inside of it. And I
Mm,
think that was my downfall because I think, like I'd said in my recap, I had never had any problems with chafing before. And
mm.
so, like, but back to your point, when it gets to a certain level of cold, it's really hard to know what to wear to where you're not like, because it can be dangerous out there.
Yeah, no, at 16 degrees is very dangerous. Like our bodies do not know how to. Well, I mean, they know how to react to it, but they react differently than what we're used to. And yeah, my lips were cracked at the end of that race. I forgot, lipstick, and it was just a terrible experience. And then my gloves, I wore I wore these old pair of like Swanee sports gloves that are just those cotton ones, and my hands were in terrible shape. Halfway through the event, I think I had a couple small blisters on my toes, and I've never had that before, and it was had to be a result of such severe cold, and then running one thing that was difficult was running across the rutted out frozen mud. I,
Yes.
my ankles hurt so bad where I guess mountain bikes had been through or walkers, and you you didn't know how your foot was going to behave when you hit it because you had to hit it at weird angles to maintain running speed, and that was something I struggled with. So it felt like the whole running surface was technical the whole time, in addition to the actual technical parts of Mountain Mist.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's funny you say that it went fast because I can tell you very little about the first 13 miles of that race
Absolutely.
because it went so fast for me. And then at mile 13 was when everything started falling apart for me. And so from 13 to 22 seemed like an absolute eternity. You
Yeah.
know, I can remember tons between mile 13 and 22. I can't tell you hardly anything other than going through that like little cave thing.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember in the first 13 miles of that race. I can't remember anything else because I was just going, you know, and it was such a great day. I mean, it was such a great day to run, because, you know, the sun was out and it was cold, but like, you know, it, it was definitely doable. But you're right though. If everything was going well, I'm sure it would have went the same way for me. It would have been like a blink, and it would have been over. Because it seems like a lot of people I've talked to had the same experience you had, where they started it and they're like, and they basically explained it in like 3 steps, and they were like, yeah, and I finished, and I was like, yeah, it
Yeah,
didn't go that way for me.
that's a good point. I mean, it feels like, three quick steps. I mean, to be an ultra race, it goes by so fast. And I think just that fast net downhill you get on that first half makes it, go by in a blur. And then you start climbing, and of course that's just a blur because you're in pain the whole time.
Oh yeah, that climb was brutal.
But there were this is before I got to Waterline. There were two guys that caught me really fast, and I was like, "This it doesn't seem right." Like, two guys casually talking, running up on me, and I got to the top of the Waterline with one of them, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we just bandit this race each year." I was like, "Oh man, I've been running so hard because I thought y'all were." Uh, racing this thing, not, jumping in for the hell of it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a great race, and I do plan on going back. I want to actually get a finish there. You know, I definitely will not be wearing those North Face thermal tights, though. Um, I don't know if I'll ever wear them again. I'm not real sure. I'm going to hold on to them because you never know. I might need them for a hike or a camping trip, but I don't think I'll be running in them ever again. No knock on North Face stuff because I love their gear, but
Yeah.
so
Keep them for shorter distances or lube them up, I guess.
yeah, just put the whole thing on it. But you know, looking ahead for you, you know, what are some of your long term goals for you? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish?
I've never attempted a 100 miler, and I got into the Yeti 100 this year, and I, that definitely scares me a little bit because I don't know what's beyond 50 miles. And, I've done 50 milers and felt pretty good at the end, but the thoughts of going back and doing 50 miles at that point seems, very intimidating. So I was between no business and Yeti, and because of the technical difficulties that will occur in the second half of a 100 miler, I decided to go with something that, despite hallucinating, you would probably still find your way back to the finish line or however that course goes. So that is my short-term goal for the year, is to be healthy and trained up and just finish that. I have no time goals. I mean, well, I want to do 24 hours at least or below, but that is on my horizon. And then, years down the road, start tackling 100 milers of, perhaps once a year of more technical, top events. Like I would like to do Superior. I would like to do the Vermont 100. I don't really have any, goals of doing any of the Western, 100s that are, impossible to get into or that are at altitude, because I typically don't do that well above 12,000 feet. So,
Hmm.
it's just, to be realistic, I don't have any interest in doing stuff like that. I like stuff here on the East Coast, and I think I'll stick to that.
Well, the Yeti 100 is my Achilles heel. Um, 3 DNFs there, and I can tell you, it's the crazy thing about that course is, um, it's it's deceptively difficult, and I think the biggest thing where people make the mistakes is going out too hard on it, because you start at the top and you run down. And so a lot of people will blow themselves up going down because you're dropping something like, I don't know, you're dropping like 1,500, 1,800 feet, like straight down, like right out of the gate. And it's like this, I mean, it's not like a slow decline. I mean, you're dropping. I mean, and a lot of people make a mistake in that first little bit. So as long as you manage that first little bit just fine, you'll crush it. Because the only weird thing is too, about the weather can get kind of wonky at nighttime. Like this year when we ran it, it got really cold at nighttime, like really, really cold. And it was the first year that I've ran it that it got that cold. But like it was like 30 degrees when I made it up to White Top, and ended up dropping at the top of White Top on the second time around. My magic number is somewhere to bring 70 and 80 before things typically fall apart for me. But I'm doing one of those races that you said that's horrible. I'm doing the 7 trails where it's like a looped 100-mile course where you just do a bunch of repeats.
Okay.
And that's by design, because I don't want to have to bring a crew with me, because I've brought a crew 3 years in a row at the Yeti 100, and I felt like I've let them down 3 years. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not bringing anybody. It's a loop. I don't need a crew. I can just, you can go, like, to your point, you can take a handheld, right? Because you're just going in a loop and you know your stuff and you just looping around,
Yeah.
And it's another Jason Green race. But if you have not done any of his races, and I'm not trying to, a lot of people know that I'm pretty partial to Jason.
Yeah.
Jason puts on some of the absolute best races and some of the best race experiences, hands down, that you're going to get anywhere. In that Yeti 100 race, and because I've done the 50 there and the 50K, and I've tried the 100-miler 3 times. The course is wonderful. The people are wonderful. Damascus is great. That section between Damascus and Abington is just gorgeous. It's flat. It's easy. You're just going to love it. I mean, the way you run, you probably will just float through it, float back up to the top, then float down and go get your buckle, because it's truly a great course and a great experience. So I think you're really going to like it. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And, like I said, I just want to be, realistic within, my skill set, and be conservative and just have a good, thorough experience and just finish the thing. I've got no like hardcore, intense, like finish goals. It's just, get it done and learn from that experience, and then, take that, down the road to potentially use it to when I feel like I'm comfortable enough to be competitive at a 100-miler. But I mean, even after so many years of running, I still can't really wrap my brain around running 100 miles. But
it definitely, I can tell you the 50 is my sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Every 50-miler I've ran in, I've had some pretty decent times, and I do pretty well at those. It definitely, the race changes at mile 50 and 100-milers 100%. At least they do for me. Like it feels different, and the dynamics completely change, because like you said, you have to, you get to that and you realize, oh shit, I've got to go another 50 miles.
Yeah.
And so you have to get your mind,
yeah,
you have to get your mindset ready to go another 50 miles, and you have to be physically ready to go another 50 miles.
Yes.
And so, but I think you'll do great. Also, I don't know if you can see very well, you get skateboard decks at the Yeti races.
Yeah, I saw that, and I've read a little bit about his events, obviously, and listened to some podcasts. I know he has a passion for for 90s skateboarding, it seems. So I do look forward to getting one of those at least.
Yeah, I got to interview him. I don't know. I think I interviewed him. It was last year. Yeah, I think I interviewed him last year. Yeah, him and I sat down and we talked a lot about his running and stuff. Because I told him, I think a lot of times people get lost in his race directing and they forget that he actually runs.
Yeah, he's been
You know,
running a long time. Yeah.
yeah. So he ran Mountain Mist, and I think he ran Javelina, and so he's a pretty good runner, and so we had a little conversation about his running, so it's pretty fun. But anyway, um, I don't want to milk too much of your time. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me tonight. It's been a great conversation, and I love to talk to people about running, and I especially love talking to people who are local with running, because it's great to be able to share stories about local trails and stuff. And I have a strong passion for Swanee, so I definitely, appreciate your time tonight, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely. And come down here sometime and we'll do a P Trail loop and have a pizza and a beer at Shenanigans afterwards.
That sounds good. Well, guys, that is it for this week's episode. I've got several other interviews lined up. I'm going to be it's kind of weird. I do a bunch of them in a row, and then you don't hear from me for a while, and then I do a bunch more in a row. So I got several more lined up. If you haven't already, give the channel a subscribe, give the video a like, and that is it. And I will see you on the trail.